Senator Bernardi.
Thank you. I move the motion standing in the name of Senator Parry. Mr Deputy President, it has often been said that a country that loses control of its borders is no longer a country. It has been said that a country that loses control of its borders loses control of its destiny. Well, I regret to say, standing here in the Senate chamber today, that the Rudd government is rapidly losing control of Australia's borders. And in this debate, I have no doubt that there will be attempts by the Labor Party to obfuscate and to hide the real crisis that is appearing on Australia's doorsteps. There will be much talk about legal and illegal asylum seekers. The Labor Party will have you believe that those who arrive here with a valid visa and then seek asylum are exactly the same as those that arrive here illegally. They are prepared to break the law to get into our country, fleeing countries of safe haven. And there is no question, Mr Deputy President, that we are seeing more asylum seekers who are entering Australia illegally since this government were winding back the policies that served Australia so well. And once again, it will come as no surprise to you, Mr Deputy President, but it may surprise those who are listening to this broadcast that once again the Rudd government has broken promises. Because in an interview just before the last election, on November 23, 2007, the very day before the last federal election, Mr Rudd made a number of promises that have been broken. In his interview with some representatives of the Australian newspaper, he said we need effective laws, effective detention arrangements, effective deterrent of vessels approaching Australian waters. He said, we'll turn them back. You cannot have anything that is orderly if you allow people who do not have a lawful visa in this country to roam free. He was going to turn the boats back. But what he's done is he's turned back the clock. He's turned back the clock to the time before 2002, when the Howard government strengthened our border protection laws. He turned back the clock to a time where thousands of people were entering this country illegally, and the proof of the consequences of his irrational, ill-considered and, quite frankly, cruel policies are there for all of us to see. Since Mr Rudd was elected, 1,464 arrivals, illegal arrivals I should say, have entered Australian territorial waters. In 13 months we've had 31 boats. There is no sign that they are stopping. There is no sign that they are dissuaded at all by our border protection policies. The only sign we have is that they're being encouraged. They're encouraged by the windback of the laws. They've been encouraged to hop into dangerous leaky boats by people smugglers in Indonesia, going around saying, we can get you into Australia, life will be better there, you'll be out in the community within a couple of months. Because the laws that the Rudd government have wound back, the legislation that they have repealed or they have changed, goes to the very heart of our border security. They scrapped the Pacific solution, which many people didn't agree with, but frankly it offered an extreme deterrent to those who sought to enter our country illegally. It's abolished temporary protection visas. It's abolished the 45-day rule, which was designed to stop rorts of our Medicare and our social security system. The Rudd government has cut the budget for immigration. It cut the department's budget by $124 million, and it's cut 600 staff over the last 18 months. This is a shameful record. A shameful record. It's abolished the debt which acted as a deterrent to those who were found to have fraudulently, illegally and had no basis to claim refugee status or asylum status. It acted as a deterrent for them to try again to get into this country. And I'm ashamed to say we are now getting people that were rejected under the Howard legislation, under the Howard government, from entering this country illegally, trying again and again to enter. And why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? They get put up in Christmas Island. They get fed, they get clothed. The conditions there are much better than they perhaps have experienced where they've come from. And these people the Rudd government, will have you believe, are impoverished and fleeing some sort of persecution. Well, they may have indeed fled persecution from their original domicile or residence, but more often than not they've been through 1, 2, sometimes 3 other countries. They've paid along the way thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars to get in a leaky boat to come to Australia. Just yesterday I heard from one of the senators on the opposition benches that these people hopped in these boats and didn't actually know where they were coming to. They didn't know, they just knew they had to get somewhere safer than a hotel in downtown Jakarta, somewhere safer than a village in Indonesia, where their lives are not under threat. Their lives are not under threat. They're paying hard cash to cruel people smugglers to get to Australia because they know when they get here they're going to get a better world, a better life. And they know they're going to get it because there's very little penalty attached to it. There's very little penalty. This government is losing control of the battle against illegals. As I said, 1,464 people have arrived illegally in this country since the Rudd government started to change the laws. It is a record which no country should be proud of. It is a record that stands in stark contrast to the humanitarian efforts that Australia has typically represented on the world stage in dealing with those people who seek, through the appropriate channels, genuine humanitarian or refugee assistance. Australia, on the refugee scale, ranks 3rd in the world, I understand, in accepting those who are displaced. We have a prudent, or we had an effective, and we had a very sensible approach to migration and humanitarian assistance and to refugees in this country. But every one of these 1,464 illegal arrivals in this country, every single one of them that is granted asylum or that is granted refugee status or that is granted permanent residence in Australia, is taking the place of those people that actually seek to do the right thing and are waiting in accordance with the United Nations mandated requirements, or that are seeking to comply with Australia's own visa requirements or Australia's own migration requirements. Mr Deputy President, no other conclusion can be drawn. No other conclusion can be drawn by a sensible and considered analysis of what has transpired. This government has changed the laws. It has wound back the clock. And as a consequence of this, in less than 13 months, more illegal arrivals have bobbed up in Australian waters than in the previous 6 years. The previous 6 years since the Howard government enforced and strengthened the integrity of Australia's borders. Let me jump back, Mr Deputy President, to my opening remarks. A country that loses control of its borders is no longer a country. A country that loses control of its borders is no longer in control of its destiny. The very question, the integrity of the future of our nation, resides around making our borders strong, secure, and ensuring that we will decide who will come to this country and who will be allowed to stay here. It is not humanitarian, it is not fair, it is not equitable, and it is completely unrealistic to expect that you can soften our borders, you can soften our laws, you can wind back the clock and not be implicitly supporting those who seek to breach our border security. And mark my words, Mr Deputy President, mark my words, there are people smugglers that are plying their trade up and down the coast, looking for people to arrive in our country, to enter Australian waters illegally. And they are making a grotesque profit by putting people's lives at risk, making promises based on the headlines in the paper which are directly related to the softening of these border protection programs. This is not a question of Australia's humanitarian efforts. It is not a question of Australia not doing its bit. It is a question of Australia maintaining its integrity and sending a very strong message that to people smugglers, that Australia is not open for their business. Australia is Australia.
Order, Senator Bernardi, your time has expired.